So here we created some basic clumps to help us to see if we have enough coverage of the guides. And I will combine these clumps with the guide mask, so only the tip of the hair is clumped and the root position is more interpolated towards what we had coming out from the hair gen. And here I want to go for a little bit more strokey look. It looks like the clumps are too sparse, so I want bigger clumps in general. And I want to see the root position more opened up while the tip is more clumped in general. And in the guide mask you can basically change it, so I always use my clumps in combination with the guide mask. So we will go higher on the clump size, and I will also test the fractal clumping and see if that works. You can see that some areas are not covered or are intersecting with each other, and these are the places where we don't have enough guides, so we need to scatter more guides in these areas. I will also try to see how it looks like with some curling enabled, and I will write an expression with a randomized clump ID. So I looked up how many clump IDs I roughly have, and that's the rough value that I'm putting in there right now just to have a little bit of variation, but this doesn't work too well if you have a guide mask in between. Sometimes the values can be quite different depending on your maximum number of clump IDs. So yeah, I have to close the bracket there. That was the issue from the beginning. That looks more like something is happening there. Yeah, it doesn't work too well with the interpolation. Alternatively, you could use a blend. In general, it works better with interpolation. This is just to see if I have enough coverage at this stage. And I will also build my ingestion outputs. And now we have a mesh update incoming, which is pretty exciting. I will add another interface. So I will just drag a new file node over for this new mesh. And we have some changes in the head and on the tail. And usually when this happens in production, and here we will disable the nodes and we can see this is our new mesh. The skull is slightly different and it also has multiple meshes in there, so we can blast off just and here you can see the changes between the two meshes. So it happens quite often that you need to adapt your GROOM to a new mesh in productions. And this is why I'm showing you this workflow. And there are two nodes that are extremely useful. It's either the guide deform or the guide transfer. They both need the source mesh that you groomed on and the target mesh or animated mesh. And that's all you need. And the guide input. So they work with this combination. Sometimes it's one or the other node is giving you a better result. This, for example, is going over the UV set. You can also transfer it through the matching topology. The UVs are slightly different, so I will put this at the end of my graph. So this is how it looks like transferred. You can see there's a kink in the ear. You have options to change the deformation radius, for example. just use this context as guides, and I will build a new hair system. Which will be easier when we want to simulate them later on. And for the hair system, I use the hair generate. I got rid of all the history that we had in there for the hairs themselves. But yeah, I will only use the neck-add context for guides. And I will build this based on what we had previously and the SOP that we had before. I will just copy over all the values there. The red colors are for what we need to export if we would use a different vendor DCC or anything else. So I keep my export rooms in a slightly different color usually. Make sure to disable subdiff curves. And here we'll just copy over what we had previously. And then we are getting some error messages. So we'll chase on what it is, and it's the rest position in this skin attribute lookup. And the issue is that we haven't connected the skin here. So we had skin attributes on it and the rest position, but the skin wasn't traveling through the connection between the neck-add and the So this is how it looks like. It currently has a lot of problems. As you can see, we will also assign the same hair shader to it. And here we will try to build more guides. You can template the groom, and I will just try to fill in the holes and add more guides in general. I'm still working on a mirrored node here, but basically I'm just going back and forth between a templated groom, and then I'm untemplating it to see how my groom changes with the guides that I've placed. And as you to add some variation. And this is the result. This is the groom that I built. It's basically similar to what we did to the ears. Basically, I'm splitting off a part and then I'm shaping it. I'm also ingesting them into the face groom, so the transitions are working better. So I'm taking all of the hairs that we just built, and then I'm just using an active area attribute similar to what we did with the cheeks. So this is what I did in order to achieve the transition there. And this is how our face groom looks like. Head hair as well. And right now I want to blur out the clumpiness a little bit more. I want to variation in the clump patterns. So in the reference, you can see there are a lot of medium-sized clumps and a lot of bigger clumps, and this will be my main base clump. At the moment, everything is the same size, so I want to change that. I will also add attribute remap, which is basically a fit function, but with a visualizer. Sometimes that works better if you only have one attribute. And here you can see what a fit function usually does, and you can define the values yourself and see the results right away, which is pretty cool. And I will use the attribute that we just created in the clump size and try to redefine the area that we're inputting, because I don't see much difference. And we will also put this into the guide mask of the blend of the overall clumps. And now we can see more difference, because all the dark tones will be blending out the clumps in general, and then we can redefine the area again. I will also add a randomized length function onto it, so some hairs are shorter and some hairs are longer. Will help you fluff it up a little bit more. But yeah, this is probably too much. We'll turn that down a little bit. And I really like that you get very defined tips there, which is something that I want to go for. Yeah, I really like this more clumped tips and the way the directionality changes. So I also want to add a frizz to change the guide's orientation, or we are putting them into the clump node. For that, I will just use sample. And yeah, the frizz is very dependent on the sample points that you have, so always try to have enough points before adding a frizz. I just want a very light noise to happen on the hairs. I don't want very broad shapes. You can probably go a little bit higher on the segment length. That will speed things up. And yeah, then I will feed this into the base hair clump. And I think it's very slow because we're also previewing the head that is live ingesting the neck at the moment, so we will disable that. Then you can see that it's being applied everywhere, but most of the hair is not getting frizz. But you can see that the clumping pattern slightly changes. But yeah, I want not as much frizz in my hair. I will create another noise attribute on my skin. For that I will just copy over the source structure that we built previously. And I want to have like some strands in between that are more curled. So I will once more write my expression. There I've randomized curls per clump. And here I will also replace that based on a noise that we created earlier. So only like a fraction of the hair will actually blend to this version of the groom. And then I will set the override for the clump noise too. So yeah, this is the difference between the two clumps. Probably optimize this a little bit further, but I'm quite happy with the look. It looks more realistic now. I think it would be good to have like a more clamped version of these two like extremes and a less interpolated version.